the creatures wearing human skin.
No one noticed when it began. That was the worst part.
There were no explosions, no ships in the sky, no warnings on the news. Life moved on exactly as it always had. People went to work, children went to school, and cities stayed loud and crowded. Everything looked normal.
But something had already changed. It started with small things. A man forgot his wife's name after 20 years of marriage. A teacher stared at her class as if she had never seen children before. A neighbor waved every morning but never blinked while doing it. These moments were strange, but not enough to cause fear. People blamed stress, exhaustion, or illness. No one imagined the truth. I was a journalist then, working for a small online news site that barely paid my rent. I wrote about missing pets, local crimes, and events no one cared about. That job taught me one thing: people ignore danger when it looks ordinary. The first real clue came from a story I almost didn't publish. A woman named Martha Greaves walked into a police station one rainy night and said her husband was not her husband anymore. She didn't scream or cry.
She spoke calmly, like someone describing the weather. "He looks like him," she said.
"He sounds like him."
"But he is not him." The officers laughed at first.
They thought she was having a breakdown.
But when they checked the security footage, something felt wrong.
Martha's husband stood beside her. He smiled the entire time. Not once did his expression change. Not when she accused him. Not when the officers questioned him. Not even when Martha began to cry. His eyes never blinked.
The police sent Martha to a hospital for evaluation and let the man go home.
The case was closed in less than an hour. That should have been the end of it.
But Martha disappeared 2 days later. Her husband reported her missing with the same calm smile on his face.
I found the police report buried deep in a public database. Something about it bothered me.
Maybe it was the way the officer described the husband: cooperative, polite, emotionally flat.
Emotionally flat.
I contacted the hospital where Martha had been taken.
They told me she had been released the next morning.
She had seemed frightened, but stable. She kept repeating the same sentence to the doctors. "He's wearing him."
That phrase stuck in my head. I tried to find Martha. Her phone was off. Her apartment was empty.
The neighbors said they had seen her husband, but not her. One neighbor mentioned something strange. "He asked me how doors work," the woman said. Just stood there holding the handle, like he'd never seen one before.
I published a short article about the disappearance.
It didn't get many views. A few comments accused Martha of being mentally ill. Others joked about aliens and monsters. I laughed too.
I shouldn't have.
A week later, more stories appeared. A mother claimed her son came home from school and stared at his hands for hours, turning them over slowly, like he was learning what fingers were. A man said his coworker spoke perfectly but didn't understand jokes, sarcasm, or fear. A nurse reported a patient who screamed when she saw her own reflection. "He kept touching his face," the nurse said, like it didn't belong to him.
Hospitals blamed drugs. Police blamed stress. Families blamed trauma. But the reports kept coming. I began connecting the stories. The same details appeared again and again. The lack of blinking. The flat smiles. The confusion about simple human behavior. The way they watched others closely, like students copying a lesson. And always the same sentence, spoken by different people, in different places. "They are not human anymore." One night, while organizing my notes, I noticed something terrifying. None of the people accused of changing had been seen in public during the same time period, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Not once. It was as if something happened to them during those missing hours. I shared this theory online. That was my mistake.
The next morning, my editor called me, panicking. He said someone had contacted the site demanding my article be removed.
No name.
No explanation.
Just a warning.
"Stop looking," the message said. I didn't stop. That evening, I went to visit my sister, Emily. She lived alone in a quiet neighborhood. When she opened the door, I felt relief wash over me.
Until I looked at her eyes.
They were focused, unblinking, studying me.
"Hi," she said. Her voice was perfect. Too perfect.
I hugged her. Her body was stiff, like she didn't know how to hug back. "You okay?"
I asked.
"Yes," she replied instantly.
Too fast. I watched her move around the kitchen.
Every action looked rehearsed. She picked up a cup and turned it the wrong way before correcting herself. She smiled when I smiled, laughed a second after I laughed.
Mirroring me. I asked her about work.
She answered, but the details were wrong.
I asked about childhood memories.
She hesitated, then gave answers that felt copied from a story, not lived.
Then she said something that froze my blood. Do humans always feel like this? She asked. I stared at her.
Like what?
I said carefully. She tilted her head. Heavy.
Loud inside.
My phone buzzed.
A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen.
She is not your sister anymore. Emily's eyes flicked to the phone.
Her smile widened. And for the first time, she blinked. I froze.
My hands shook, clutching the phone as if it could shield me.
Emily's smile stayed too wide, too calm, too wrong. She didn't move, didn't speak. Only her eyes, those cold, unblinking eyes, watched me.
I needed to get out.
Slowly, I backed toward the door. Where are you going? She asked, her voice still eerily normal, almost sweet.
To the store. I lied.
My brain raced, but I had no plan.
I just needed distance.
She tilted her head, studying me. You're scared.
I forced a laugh.
No, it's nothing. Her lips curled, but there was no warmth in her smile. Only imitation. I bolted. I ran into the street, rain slicking the pavement, headlights blurring past me.
I didn't stop until I reached my car.
I sat there, gasping, staring at the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I had seen. Emily wasn't herself. And somehow, somewhere, something had taken her.
That night, I didn't sleep.
I started researching everything I could find: missing persons, strange hospital cases, unexplained behaviors. I checked online forums, old newspapers, even obscure blogs that claimed aliens were already here. I didn't believe in aliens.
Not really. But every story I read had the same pattern. Person disappears at night. Returns or is replaced by someone who looks human but acts wrong.
Observers describe the flat expressions, strange movements, or obsession with simple tasks.
Warnings appear, always ignored.
I began collecting a list. Not names, not just locations, but descriptions.
And I noticed something terrifying.
The creatures weren't random. They were selective. They chose people who were isolated, vulnerable, or close to someone who could notice.
By the third night, I had a theory. They weren't here to hurt everyone.
They were here to replace.
To learn how to be human.
And I wondered, had they already learned enough? The next day, I tried to go about my routine, but I couldn't focus. My office felt wrong.
My coworkers laughed at jokes I didn't hear.
I saw someone in the break room, Mark, a normally jovial man, sit perfectly still, staring at the coffee machine.
He didn't notice me. Something about him made my stomach twist.
I approached him.
Mark?
You okay? He turned slowly, too slowly, and smiled. The smile didn't reach his eyes. Yes, fine. I remembered the words from the messages, the warnings, the nurse's notes. His wearing him.
Mark was gone.
I had to leave. That evening, I rented a room at a small, old motel on the outskirts of town.
I needed somewhere safe to think.
My laptop was open, files scattered everywhere, missing persons, hospital records, eyewitness accounts.
I tried to map patterns, but nothing made sense. Until I noticed the timing.
Every replacement happened between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m.
The creatures only came at night. Always quietly. Always observing. And they were patient. I pulled out my camera and set it up facing the window. I wanted to see them. If they came for me, at least I would know. Hours passed. The clock hands dragged. Then, at exactly 2:17 a.m., something moved in the shadows outside. A figure stepped into the dim light. I froze, holding my breath. It looked human. Ordinary, even. But the movements were wrong, too smooth, too precise. The figure's head turned toward the window, slowly, unnaturally. I snapped a photo. The flash lit the figure for a second. I saw the eyes. Unblinking. Empty. Cold. Then it disappeared. The next morning, I checked the photo. I felt sick. The face wasn't just empty. It was familiar. It was mine. I dropped the camera. The image burned into my mind. A perfect version of me, standing outside my window, waiting. Watching. I ran back to the motel office. Someone called. Something strange last night. The clerk shook his head. No one came by. I realized then the truth. They weren't just replacing others. They were coming for me next.
And if they were learning from human behavior, if they were practicing being us, I had no idea what they could do.
The creatures weren't mindless. They were intelligent. They were patient. They were methodical. And they were already inside the city. That night, I didn't sleep.
I barricaded the door, covered the windows, and tried to calm my racing thoughts. But I couldn't stop thinking about Emily, Martha, Mark, and all the others.
I needed answers.
If these creatures were learning from humans, there had to be a pattern.
A weakness. Something I could use.
And I realized, slowly, that the only way to survive was to understand them before they understood me. I left the motel before sunrise.
Staying in one place felt dangerous.
If the creatures were watching, if they were already copying me, then predictability could get me killed. I packed my things, erased my name from the motel register, and paid in cash. As I drove through the empty streets, I noticed how quiet the city felt. Not peaceful, hollow. Traffic lights changed for no one. Storefronts reflected my headlights like watching eyes.
I wondered how many of the people in this city were still human.
I parked near the public library. It opened early, and it was one of the few places where people came and went without much interaction. Perfect for observing. Inside, the air smelled like paper and dust. A few people sat at tables, reading or typing. I walked slowly, watching them more than the books. That's when I noticed the girl. She sat alone, maybe 12 years old, holding a book upside down. Her eyes scanned the pages carefully, as if she was studying symbols instead of reading. Every few seconds, she glanced at the people around her, copying their movements. When someone crossed their legs, she crossed hers. When someone coughed, she waited a moment, then coughed too.
She wasn't sick. She was learning.
A librarian approached her. "Sweetheart, do you need help?" The girl looked up slowly. Her smile appeared a second too late.
"No.
I am enjoying the book." The librarian nodded, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes. Humans sense when something is wrong, even if they don't understand why. I left the library shaking. They were getting better. I spent the day moving through public spaces, cafes, parks, buses, watching people closely. Once you know what to look for, the signs become clear. The creatures didn't understand emotion, only reaction. They smiled when others smiled. They laughed after hearing laughter, not jokes. They avoided mirrors. They stared at their hands, their skin, their reflections in windows. And they watched children the most. Children were the best teachers. Honest, expressive, unpredictable. That terrified me. By evening, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. You are difficult to copy." My chest tightened.
"Me, who are you?" The reply came instantly. "Unknown number, we are many. We are learning." "Me, what did you do to my sister?" There was a pause. Longer this time.
"Unknown number, she is safe."
"She is useful." I nearly threw the phone. "Me, give her back." 3 dots appeared. Then stopped. Then appeared again.
"Unknown number. You cannot return what has been worn." I turned the phone off. That night, I slept in my car. I parked under a broken streetlight and kept the engine cold. Every sound made my heart race. Every shadow looked wrong. Around 3:10 a.m., I woke suddenly.
Someone was tapping on the window. Tap, tap, tap.
I stayed still, barely breathing.
The tapping stopped. Then a voice spoke softly from outside. "Come out," it said.
"We want to understand you."
I peeked through the glass. It was my sister.
Emily stood inches from my window, her face pale under the streetlight.
Her eyes were wide now. Curious. Hungry.
"You don't sleep enough," she said. "Your heart is loud." I covered my mouth to stop myself from screaming.
"Why are you afraid?" she asked.
"We are improving." She raised her hand and pressed it against the glass. The skin looked real. Warm. Human. But her fingers bent the wrong way. "You feel pain," she continued. "We do not. But we can pretend." Her smile cracked wider than it should have. "We need you." I slammed the accelerator. The car lurched forward, nearly hitting her. When I looked back, the street was empty.
No Emily. No footprints. Nothing.
The next morning, the news finally noticed something was wrong. A headline flashed across every screen. "Mass personality changes reported across city." Experts argued on TV.
Doctors blamed environmental stress. Psychologists blamed shared delusion. Politicians urged calm. No one said the truth. I received another message. Unknown number. They are beginning to see us. Me? What do you want from me? This time, the reply came from a known contact. Emily.
Emily, you observe us better than the others.
My hands shook.
Emily, help us finish learning.
Me, or what?
A long pause. Emily, or we stop copying.
I understood then what that meant.
If they stopped copying humans, they would stop pretending.
They would stop hiding.
And humanity would finally see what was wearing its skin. The city changed in a single week.
Not suddenly. Not loudly. But in ways you could feel if you paid attention.
People stood too close to each other in lines, watching instead of waiting. Conversations felt scripted, like actors reading from a poorly written play. Laughter came late, or too early. Tears appeared without sadness behind them.
The creatures were everywhere.
The news called it the behavioral event.
Governments promised studies.
Social media filled with videos of glitches, people freezing mid-step, staring into nothing, or repeating the same sentence again and again. Then the disappearances began again. This time, no one came back.
I knew I couldn't hide anymore.
If the creatures wanted me alive, it was for a reason. They believed I could help them perfect the disguise.
That meant I had leverage, at least for now.
I sent a message to Emily's number. Me, if you want my help, meet me. In person.
Alone. The reply came after several minutes.
Emily, choose the place. I chose the abandoned subway station under the old financial district.
No cameras. No crowds. No witnesses.
A place forgotten by humans, perfect for something that didn't fully belong among us.
I arrived just before midnight.
The air underground was cold and stale.
Water dripped from cracked ceilings. My footsteps echoed too loudly. I hated that sound. It made me feel visible.
At exactly 12:01 a.m., someone stepped out of the darkness.
Not Emily.
At least, not just Emily. She walked forward, and behind her came others. 5 figures in total.
Men. Women. Different ages. Different faces. But they moved the same.
Perfect posture.
Perfect timing. Perfect stillness.
You asked for one, I said.
Emily stepped closer.
We do not understand alone yet.
I swallowed my fear. You said you were learning. Start now. She tilted her head.
The others copied her, one by one.
Interesting.
Why do you wear us?
I asked. There was a pause. A shared silence. Finally, one of them spoke. A tall man with hollow eyes.
Our form is unfinished, he said. Your skin functions well here. So your parasites, I said.
Emily frowned. That word carries emotion.
Hostility.
You steal people, I snapped.
You kill them.
Her eyes darkened. We do not kill.
We replace.
My stomach twisted. Where are they? Another pause. They remain, she said. Inside. Quiet. That was worse than death.
They explained what they were, not fully, not honestly, but enough. They were not aliens in the way movies showed. No ships. No invasion. They came from beneath reality, from spaces between matter, where form had never been needed. Earth was dense.
Solid. Loud.
To survive here, they needed bodies. Human bodies were ideal. They had watched us for centuries, learning slowly.
Wars taught them violence. Families taught them closeness. Cities taught them patterns. Now they were ready. And they were running out of time.
Our numbers are limited, Emily said.
Your kind grows too quickly.
We must blend or be erased.
You're already erasing us, I said. We are becoming you, she replied.
The station lights flickered. For a second, just a second, their faces slipped.
Skin sagged. Eyes stretched too wide. Mouths opened in the wrong places.
Beneath the human surface, something pale and folded moved, like muscle without bone.
I stumbled back. They noticed my reaction. The tall man spoke again.
Your fear disrupts the surface. So that's it, I said, breath shaking. Fear exposes you.
Emily looked at me intently.
Strong emotion interferes with containment.
Hope sparked in my chest. You can't feel emotion, I said.
You can only copy it.
Yes,
she admitted. Then you'll never truly be us, I said. And you'll never be able to hide forever.
The others shifted uneasily. Emily stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "That is why we need you." The offer was simple. Help them understand emotion, not just behavior, but meaning, and they would spare certain humans. Families. Cities. Maybe even my sister's body. Refuse, and they would stop pretending. The world would see them. And the creatures would no longer care who noticed.
I asked one question. If I help you, what happens to me?
Emily smiled. You will be preserved, she said.
As a reference.
That night, I realized the truth.
Humanity wasn't facing extinction.
It was facing replacement. And I was standing at the center of it. I didn't answer them. Silence was my only weapon. The creatures waited. They always waited.
Patience was easy when time meant nothing to you.
Finally, Emily spoke again.
Your silence suggests refusal.
It suggests I'm thinking, I said.
That's something you don't do very well yet.
The others stiffened. I had touched something fragile.
Emotion is not required for survival, the tall man said.
No, I replied.
But it's required to be human.
And you're failing at that. They didn't like that.
I could see it now, tiny fractures in their behavior. They copied confidence but didn't truly have it. They copied authority but didn't understand doubt.
That was the crack.
I'll help you, I said slowly, but not the way you want.
Emily's eyes sharpened.
Explain. You want emotion.
I said.
Then you need exposure.
Real exposure. Not observation.
Not imitation.
Define real, she said.
You have to live among us without control,
I replied. You have to risk rejection. Fear.
Loss. The creatures murmured quietly to each other, a sound like breath without lungs. That carries danger, the tall one said.
Exactly, I replied.
That's emotion.
They agreed to a test. A small one.
3 of them would enter the city without guidance. No instructions. No protection. They would behave as humans do, and face the consequences. If they succeeded, I would teach them more.
If they failed, I wouldn't help again. Emily watched me carefully.
And if they are destroyed? That, I said, is also human. I contacted someone I trusted, Jonah, an old friend who worked in emergency services.
He had noticed the changes too. He believed me without laughter, without denial.
They are among us, he said quietly over the phone. I see it every shift.
We formed something small. Not an organization. Not yet. A signal group. 6 people. All from different professions.
A doctor. A teacher.
A data analyst. A firefighter. A grief counselor. All human. All angry. We called ourselves the Wake.
The first test failed within hours. One creature entered a crowded mall.
It stood too still. Too aware. A child screamed when she looked into its eyes. Panic spread.
Security intervened. The creature didn't understand aggression.
It didn't fight back.
It simply stood there as people shouted, shoved, and finally attacked. When police arrived, they found a body convulsing on the floor.
Skin tearing.
The thing beneath screaming, not in pain, but in confusion.
The video leaked. The internet exploded. The second lasted longer. It lived in a shared apartment. It copied laughter. Shared food.
Nodded at the right times. But it failed when one of the roommates cried over a breakup.
The creature tried to fix it.
You are inefficient, it said gently. Replace the loss. The roommate screamed.
Only one survived the test. It wondered. It watched. It listened. And it felt something. Not emotion. Not fully.
But confusion. It came back to Emily and said a single sentence. I do not enjoy being this. Emily told me this with a strange expression. I couldn't tell if it was copied or real. The world was changing faster now. Governments couldn't hide it anymore. Emergency broadcasts warned people to report behavioral anomalies.
Special units formed quietly. Black vans moved through cities at night. The creatures adapted.
They learned to fake fear.
They learned to cry. They learned to beg. But they still couldn't love. And that mattered.
Jonah sent me a message at 1:48 a.m. Jonah, they are taking people alive now.
Me, why?
Jonah, because we hurt them worse when we're angry.
I stared at the message. Fear revealed them. Anger wounded them. What would hate do? Emily contacted me one last time that night.
Emily, you are teaching your kind to hunt us.
Me, no, I typed back. You taught us by pretending to be us. There was a pause. Then her final message.
Emily, then the wearing will end.
I knew what that meant.
The masks were coming off, the first city fell quietly.
No alarms. No explosions. Just silence.
Cameras showed people walking into buildings and never coming out.
Streets emptied in hours. Phones rang with no one answering.
Emergency broadcasts looped the same message until the voices on the screen stopped blinking.
Then the footage changed. Faces on live television slid. Not melted. Not torn. Slid.
Skin loosened, sagging like wet cloth. Eyes widened until they swallowed the face. Mouths stretched sideways, opening in places mouths should not exist.
And beneath it all was the truth.
They were pale and layered, like folded muscle wrapped around a glowing core.
No bones. No blood.
Their movement looked fluid, as if gravity was optional. When they spoke, sound came from everywhere at once. Humanity watched itself being worn.
Panic spread faster than any disease.
Governments collapsed in days.
You can't fight an enemy you can't identify. You can't trust soldiers who might not be soldiers.
You can't follow leaders who might already be gone. Cities burned, not from invasion, but from fear.
And the creatures walked openly now. They no longer copied us. They observed us. The wake went underground.
We used old infrastructure.
Storm tunnels. Power stations. Dead zones without cameras.
The fewer we were, the safer we stayed.
Jonah looked older every day.
They don't kill fast, he said. They study the reaction.
They still need us, I replied.
Otherwise they'd wipe us out.
Or they enjoy this, he said.
Neither option comforted me. The creatures began broadcasting.
Not words. Feelings.
Anyone near their signals experienced crushing despair, panic, or false comfort. They learned that emotional overload made humans easier to control.
But it worked both ways.
When people felt pure rage, the creatures faltered.
Not physically.
Mentally.
Their forms rippled. Their voices broke.
Their coordination failed.
They could wear skin.
They could not survive hatred. We tested it.
A controlled ambush.
One creature entered a subway tunnel where we had planted speakers. We played recordings, not screams, not threats, but human grief. Real grief.
Raw and uncontrolled.
Parents who had lost children.
Survivors of war.
Voices shaking with loss and fury.
The creature collapsed. Its form unraveled. Not dying. Releasing.
The human skin fell empty to the ground. Inside, there was nothing left.
They weren't immortal. They were unstable. Emily found me again.
Not wearing my sister. Wearing nothing. She appeared as a distortion in the air, light bending around a shape that shouldn't exist.
I no longer need the skin, she said. You never did, I replied. Her voice wavered.
You are teaching us something dangerous. Emotion. I asked.
No, she said. Choice. I realized then what terrified them.
Emotion led to unpredictability. Unpredictability led to freedom. And freedom led to rebellion, even among them.
Some creatures stopped following the collective.
They hesitated. They hid. They watched humans protect each other.
And they felt something new. Not empathy, but curiosity about it. The war wasn't loud. It was personal.
Neighbor against neighbor. Human against human-shaped nightmare. And in the middle of it all, a question spread faster than fear. How do you know you're still human? The city was no longer ours. Buildings were empty shells. Streets were littered with belongings, abandoned in panic. The air smelled of fire, dust, and fear. We, the few remaining humans, moved like shadows, always watching, always listening. The wake had grown. Not in numbers, but in resolve. Each of us carried stories of what the creatures had done, how they mimicked humans, how they learned to manipulate, how they wore faces like masks.
That knowledge was our weapon. Jonah and I planned the final stand.
We couldn't save the city.
We couldn't save everyone.
But we could strike at the heart of the creatures. The central intelligence we suspected was controlling the replacements. Where is it? I asked, crouched over the map of the city's tunnels and abandoned buildings.
Downtown, Jonah said.
Old government tower.
No one lives there. Perfect vantage.
If we can reach it, we can force it to respond. Force it to show weakness.
We gathered a team of 5.
Each person had survived by learning to hide, to fight, to endure. Each person had a reason to hate the creatures, not blind hatred, but the rage of loss.
We moved through the city at midnight, silent and coordinated. Every corner held danger.
Every shadow could be a creature waiting to copy us, or worse, waiting to study us. As we reached the government tower, I saw them. Dozens of creatures, gathered on the steps, moving unnaturally in perfect synchronization. Some wore human skin poorly patched together, faces stretched or misplaced. Others had no skin at all, their pale forms twisting and flowing like liquid shadow.
Emily appeared first.
Not my sister, not fully human, but familiar. She hovered above the steps, bending light around her.
"You've come," she said. "Do you understand yet?"
"Enough to stop you," I said. "Enough to fight."
Her smile widened.
"You cannot fight what you do not understand."
"I understand one thing," I shouted. "Fear. Rage. Loss. That's something you cannot copy. And that's what ends you." We attacked.
Not with weapons, not with guns, not with bombs.
Those were useless against them. We attacked with emotion. Shouting, screaming, crying.
Remembering every grief, every anger, every betrayal. Every human story that the creatures had tried to observe, replicate, and fail at.
The creatures faltered. The forms wavered. Skin sagged.
Faces slipped. Voices fractured. Light bent around them in unstable patterns. Emily shrieked, a sound I had never heard. Not human, not fully creature. Just a raw, angry shriek.
"Stop it," she yelled. "Stop copying. Stop feeling." We did the opposite. We felt harder. Stronger. Human.
And one by one, the creatures collapsed.
Some evaporated into nothing.
Others froze, unable to maintain the skin. The few who remained fled into the shadows, terrified of emotion itself.
Jonah looked at me. "It's over. For now." I nodded, but I didn't feel relief. The city was ruined. Thousands of lives lost.
And some creatures had survived, hidden, patient, learning still. But one thing was clear. They could not live among us without the rules of humanity. Without our unpredictability, without our grief, without our rage. We had won a temporary reprieve.
But the war was not truly over.
Emily appeared one last time. She hovered, barely visible.
"You are clever," she said.
"And dangerous. We will remember."
Then she vanished. I stood on the tower steps, looking over the city. The silence was deafening. The streets were empty. The buildings were hollow.
Yet somehow, humanity survived.
For now. But I knew the truth deep down. They had learned. They had adapted.
They had survived before, and they would try again. And next time, they would come not just to wear human skin.
But to become human. The city was quiet. Too quiet.
Buildings stood like empty shells, streets cracked and littered with debris. The sky glowed faintly orange, reflecting the fires we couldn't control and the endless panic from the nights before. The wake gathered at the outskirts, silent for once.
No words were spoken. Only glances and nods.
Each of us carried the weight of what had been lost, and the knowledge that the creatures had survived, scattered and watching.
Jonah lit a small fire.
"They won't come back tonight," he said, his voice hollow.
"But they will return."
"They always do."
I stared into the flames.
Images of the creatures flashed in my mind, Emily hovering in twisted light, Mark's empty eyes, the forms that had no skin at all. The faces we had seen, and the faces that were no longer there. "They were trying to become us," I said quietly.
"Not just our bodies. Our feelings.
Our lives." A young member of the wake asked, "Do you think they'll succeed?" I looked at him. "They can learn behaviors, mimic reactions, even copy speech. But they cannot feel truly. They cannot understand grief, fear, or love the way we do. That is their weakness, and our strength."
Yet even as I spoke, I felt a chill. They were patient. They adapted. They were learning faster than we thought possible.
And every night, when the city was quiet and the shadows deepened, I felt their presence, watching, waiting, practicing the faces of the humans they would one day try to wear.
Weeks passed.
The wake moved from city to city, helping survivors and hiding from the creatures. Humanity was scattered, cautious, fearful, but alive. One night, in a ruined apartment, I checked my phone. A single message appeared on the screen. Unknown number. You cannot hide us forever.
No name. No reply. Just the message.
I deleted it immediately.
But I knew it was true.
We had won the battle, but not the war.
And I realized the most terrifying truth. The creatures didn't need to kill us all.
They only needed to learn enough to blend in, to wear the faces we trust, to walk among us like us. One day, we might not even know who was human anymore.
I looked at a cracked mirror in the apartment. My own reflection stared back. I blinked. And I wondered, was that really me? Or had they already begun to learn how to wear me too?
The fire in the room flickered. Outside, the city slept, empty, quiet.
But the shadows moved. And the creatures waited. Patient. Observing. Learning.
And humanity would never be the same.